I don't know. Oh, it's the 8th. Today's the 8th, right?
Yes.
Yes, Madam Mayor.
I have to check. Oh, Ronaldo, you look a little sleep deprived.
Just a little bit.
Madam Mayor, it is 9:07 and we are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Friday, September 8th, 2023 agenda meeting. Could we have the roll call?
Yes, Mayor Betty Rash,
I'm here.
Vice Mayor Christopher McVoy,
Here.
Commissioner Sarah Maliga is absent, Commissioner Kimberly Stokes is absent, Commissioner Reynaldo Diaz.
Here.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Who's got something they want to talk about?
I can start, I guess. I had brought up the other day at one of our budget meetings, in relation to the pump station that's being worked on the 18th. I brought up looking at policy for our seawalls effectively and shoreline resilience. So I kind of wanted to see if we could start that conversation. I don't know well, we have Glenn, I guess, but the idea is, or the thought is, other communities have rules like, if you have a seawall, if you're going to work on it, or if you're going to add a new seawall, then it needs to be X number of feet above mean high tide line. I think that is probably a good start, but I think we can do more. And I wanted to look at, having requirements like that so that if there is a seawall, we can be better prepared and better protecting ourselves, but also looking at and encouraging other options like shoreline softening technologies, and also looking at what can we do. I'm going to use the word incentivize, but I'm not necessarily saying we should look at incentives, but what can we do to encourage our, private lagoon side property owners to do that? And of course, that includes us, because we have so much seawall at Bryant Park, and we also have, Snook Islands, which isn't a seawall, but we have a lot of shoreline that needs protecting.
Who is, I don't know who to ask this question. I great idea. Are we seeking funds for that, or what? Where are we with the seawall? I mean, is there any
that's a really good question, because I'm honestly not sure. I think that's what we need to look into. I think there probably there's for sure an opportunity for us to ask for money from Tallahassee, especially for our seawall and our shorelines. There's money out there for shoreline resilience and whatnot. For private property, I think that's where the challenge is. That's where I think people as in municipalities are struggling, because if you do have a seawall and it looks like this, it's not really an effective seawall. Or if you're on one of the neighbors on the lower part, you're going to be affected during a storm more than a neighbor who's raised. So the trick and the challenge is, how do we get those properties consistent, if you will, but also in a quicker in a quicker way. Because you look at some of our streets, South 9th Street, and we're going to start that pump station on 18th, and then 9th is coming up next. But if we keep pumping lagoon water back into the lagoon, but we don't add to the protection, then it might be, we don't want it to be a useless endeavor in 20 or 30 years.
Is there a requirement for private own? I mean, if we're going to talk about the private people first, do you know a requirement that a private property owner has to maintain, is there a certain thing they have to do, whether it's seawall so I'm just looking at
So
Google with the,
yeah, so seawalls do need regular maintenance. They
but
look
what about not having one? Because I'm looking
oh
down at Google
right.
Earth and I don't see a lot of seawalls on the private property. I see more softer, soft.
There's a little bit of both. When you don't have a seawall, it's actually better to maintain it without a seawall, and
Right.
you're better protected if you have things like mangroves on that shoreline and you have a more of a like natural slope,
Mhm.
especially from storm surge.
Right.
So that and that's where I think that's what I meant when I think we could do better than other communities that say, X amount of feet over mean high tide, because I think a so-called soft shoreline, which is what you're describing, it works better, especially from storm protection. It's just going to be better when you have
Right.
the right plants, the right elevation and whatnot in front of your coastline. So it'll be a combination of both, and I think we can be really innovative. And then if they have a seawall, there really isn't any kind of like requirement for them to do anything to
Someone's
it.
knocking at my door.
Okay. There isn't really any requirement for people to do anything to their seawall if they already have one, but they do require regular maintenance. So, it's over several decades, which is part of the challenge, is you kind of want people to protect our shoreline now, but they might be decades away from maintenance. So it's something to look at. I don't know if Erin is on. I know I've talked to her about it. It seems like ages ago. And surprisingly, it's kind of, I'm not going to say it's like a new field of land use law in Florida, because you would think that, it would be something that the state looks at seriously. But it's something that there's not maybe a tremendous amount of case law out there, and but it's something that a lot of people recognize needs to be looked at.
Okay. So how do we start? How do we do that?
Well, I don't know if Glenn has any thoughts on that.
Well,
Do you want a mandate for the private people?
we could start. I mean, I know Commissioner Diaz has more experience in this than probably any of us on the room, but other communities, Fort Lauderdale is one of the ones that has probably been the leader in putting together seawall type ordinances. I'm not so sure theirs deal much with the soft shoreline though, because there are lots of seawalls down there. So we could start surveying other waterfront communities and maybe lay out a table or options and work with Commissioner Diaz to come up with some suggestions.
Are we talking about like on mandating people to do it, like ordering them to that they
Well, yeah.
have the, I just,
Well, what most of them are doing is saying future construction, that future construction must be at
Right.
a certain height, so that's I don't want to say that's the low lying fruit, but it kind of is, because then you're not affecting people that currently have the seawalls. But then, as he's talked about, maintenance of them, requiring maintenance. So maybe it's better we just give you the menu of what's out there, because other people have been working on this all up and down the coast, from the Keys all the way as far north as you can go, Jacksonville, probably even. So, Commissioner, what do you think that we kind of work on this together?
I think that's a good start, because that is a good way of putting it. The low-hanging fruit, or the easy way, if you will, is next time you touch your seawall, it's got to be higher. But and then we can, and maybe out of that survey and looking at other options, maybe we can think of another option or way to encourage people, or maybe there's some way that we can incentivize them that isn't necessarily like money, if you will, because something certainly needs to be done. I'm looking at the end of some of these streets, especially on Palmway, like 18th and 9th, and it's quite literally, it's knocking on our door or knocking on their door, and something really needs to be done. And then of course we have, Mary, you're correct, a lot of the ones that don't have seawalls, they're actually our properties. They're these little pieces of property that's like the end of some of the streets that go right into the lagoon, and you know, I think part of what we should be doing, looking at those properties, is looking at doing living shoreline projects, mangroves, or whatever it may be. And then on some of those properties, you have a bit of a dual purpose, because some of those streets have had some security issues and trespassers, and people who are using the end of those streets to do things. And some of them are kind of half fenced off, some of them aren't. But in any case, you know, those are our little properties that we should be protecting the shoreline with whatever means or technology available. If it already has a seawall, then maybe we improve the seawall and soften it up a little bit. If it's already a natural shoreline, we definitely want to maintain that and figure out how we can better protect it. Because, you know, I'll never forget, it's really visual when you see it. I'll never forget when Dorian was coming towards our coast that year. I was actually out in the lagoon when it was over the Bahamas, and I, you know, specifically was working on Jewel Steinhardt Cove. And with the surge and the high tide at that time, you know, the water was up to the tops of some of those red mangroves, and it was really impressive how flooded it was, if you will. And then I went out the next day. Obviously, we didn't take a direct hit from Dorian, but I went out the next day, and somehow that shoreline looked like it was cleaner. It looked like it was better than the day before. They really, like, super resilient, if you will. So you know, I
And
think
those are just 50-foot strips, they're like 20, that's the ends of all the roads. And I'm sure we've all gotten complaints from the adjacent neighbors about stuff going on there that they'd rather not have
Right.
next door to their house, right? But then there's some people complain because the city did a lot of revocable permits and abandonments down there, which, you know, other people didn't like it because we're giving away public property. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, I mean, we own most of it, I think, right? So we have,
Yeah, those those permits definitely, you know, are on their way out. I would not support that either, but yeah, for sure, the stuff that we own, we got to work on. And you know, that's almost, I'm not gonna say that's the easy part. There's money involved with that for sure, but you know, the challenging part is how do we encourage our private property owners to do that? You know, I really think about, if you look at that, I can't remember the name of it, but you look at that condo on the very south end of town, and their parking lot, I mean, there's barely a curb. It goes right into the lagoon, and they really could use, I think, help on protecting
Right.
that building.
right, so you're gonna work with Glenn?
Yeah, and I know, you know, Aaron and William, of course, to see what insight they have.
Yeah, and Madam Mayor, too, as we go into the legislative session planning, we're talking about pursuing resiliency funding to do an assessment of our shoreline so we can know what we need to do to fortify that. I wonder if we can do all along our coast so that it'll even include the private partners, our private properties, and we can see what the consultant who does the planning and assessment for us give us ideas as well in that process.
Yeah, and I think if we, you know, make the moves to do whatever policy change we can do to help protect ourselves, when you know, when Richard goes to Tallahassee and is asking money for this study, if you will, we can, you know, tell these legislators this is something we're taking really seriously, and we're making the moves. And
Mhm.
it's, you know, property insurance companies are bailing on Florida, and this is really the specific reason why. So we really got to make moves to kind of show that we're really doing our best to address this.
And along those, I'm glad you talked about, you know, the legislature along the same lines. A couple of weeks ago, I was up at the Florida League of Cities conference, and one of the things that they were talking about, and I made me pause to think, you know, we go up to Tallahassee, we meet them, we say, this is what we like. Richard works a little bit ahead of time, but what they suggest, I'm going to follow up on. And so I'm asking I would like to know everyone's sort of ask and meet with Carmen about what are our asks so that we can go. I want to talk to the legislators before we go to Tallahassee, and it's a big party. I want to meet with them, and I have, we all have relationships with them ahead of time and say, this is what we're looking for, so that they know when they go up there, it's not like in February, we go, oh, and by the way, I want to be able to have them thinking on their way up what we need. So I think this is exactly one of those things that we could talk about.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that is something, that is super important, especially now. Like technically we should be meeting with them right now because they're
Exactly.
in home
Yeah.
office and in town.
Yeah, and we
And
haven't really done that. We've been behind that, I think.
right. And similarly, a legislative ask. One of the things I had suggested, because we are asking for things on shoreline and water specifically, and a little while ago we had invited like Palm Beach council members to come tour our water plant and what we have to offer. And Carmen and I have discussed recently about when we have these legislative asks and whatnot, if we ask, for example, for money to help, to do our monitoring well that we really need to do, by the way. We should also be taking a moment right now as these legislators are in town to take them around and show them what we have to offer, not just at our water plant, but everything else, and really maintain those relationships. It's critical because
Yeah.
once those sheets start getting turned in, they're a little too busy in Tallahassee. So
Exactly.
now's the
Exactly.
time.
Yeah. So if everyone let Carmen know, because when we meet them with the legislators, we can all be on the same page. What was I gonna say? Oh,
Couple of comments, if I could follow up on that.
Sure.
One, on the legislative things, I'm all for us being proactive on the ask. My only encouragement would be definitely early on communicate with Richard Pinsky. He has a ton of experience with.
He would be involved with that conversation, Chris, of course.
Yeah, we have a scheduled meeting on the 12th. So
Yeah.
next week I meet with Richard to start that process, because the legislative process starts very early. So we're going to be on the ball very early.
Mhm.
Good. And follow his, in general, I would say follow his lead. He knows what works, and I think that's helpful for, we have a great resource in him in terms of lots of connections and experience. On specifically the shoreline things, I'm all for the soft aspects, mangroves to break some of the wave energy and surge energy. The only caution I put with that is it still needs an elevation, land elevation behind it. And coming to the mayor's question of, well, how should we proceed, which is a very sensible question. I think what Glenn proposed, let's look and see what other communities that are on it. Fort Lauderdale is very active on it, but I think he's right that it's mostly hard shoreline. Let's see what they're doing, but also let's try to imagine some sort of educational thing where we're educating our shoreline owners, including ourselves. It seems sort of obvious, but if you have 80% of the shoreline raised to elevation 20, and you've got 3 openings that are at elevation 14, all of that 20 does nothing. It's all just going to come in the 14 and spread itself around. So it's one of those things that, this only works if we're all on board, and that's not easy. But at least to get some of the education, I suspect there's some visual modeling that's available that can help with that education, so that we're not just coming in and perceived as, well, we're telling people what to do. No, we're helping them understand why this is an issue. I think that would help.
Yeah. Okay. Chris, do you have anything other? I'm sure you have something.
I have a couple of things. First one is, we, a while back, well, I guess last year even, and this year, supported the Self Solar Energy Loan Fund, which sounds like it's only solar energy, but it's not. It's home improvements, and the very interesting loan program with a spectacular success rate on very, very low defaults on it. They are here. I met with Pierre Contave, the person that they've hired as our person here in Lake Worth. Very impressed. He partly grew up here in Lake Worth, went off afterwards to college in California and in Alabama, has worked in finance a lot, very people-oriented, very service-oriented. I suspect he's going to be a very good fit for us. So I'll be trying to set up some meetings with the city manager, with Mr. Liberty, make sure that we all know him. I'd like to suggest that we also invite him for, I don't know that it needs to be a 10-minute presentation, but maybe a 5-minute one to remind us of what SELF does and introduce himself at an upcoming meeting. So that's one. I've mentioned before that there's a protecting soil proclamation that would like us to put in our list of proclamations. I can send that to the city manager and ask her to send it around for people to have a look if they'd like, or we can just put it on the agenda, whichever people prefer. And I've also received a request for a climate change proclamation. I can do the same, send that to the city manager, and people can look at it and weigh in whether they want to do that or not. And
Excuse me, Vice Mayor, I'm sorry. Mayor Resch sent a Florida Climate Week, which is sort of climate change. It'll be on the October 3rd agenda, the proclamation.
it did use, can you remind me? I didn't hear the front part of that. Who sent it?
Mayor Resch sent it to me, and I'm sure to Carmen, for Florida Climate Week, and it addresses climate change. It is on the October 3rd agenda.
And do you know the does anyone know the organization that
It was
was?
Voss Group. I don't have, I'm up in Orlando. I don't have, it's Voss Group, or I don't have my emails with me.
What? VOLO, VOLO, by any chance? Okay,
Could be.
all right. That's the same one. So if that's already in the works, then I don't need to do anything. Great. My final one is, I only on Thursday learned that for the apprenticeship program, the lineman apprenticeship program, as I think people will recall, I was very concerned over the last year or so when we reduced it from 4 apprentices to almost eliminating it and then bringing it back up to 1. I just learned Thursday that for the coming year, it is funded only for 1. I am very, very strongly opposed to that. It makes no sense to just do 1 apprentice. It also does not make sense to not start, whether we're going to go with 2 or with 4, whatever the number is, greater than 1. It doesn't make sense to start them at different times. It makes it much harder to do the program and requires more resources from other linemen if you don't start several at the same time. We've already started the 1, I believe, in June of this year. So if we get a second one, or 4 if we're ambitious, going, we should do it very soon, not wait a year. And I'm adamant that we need that. We need to build our bench of linemen. You need to have people who are committed to this city, who are trained in the city, who are loyal to our system. And the apprentice program has proven over probably close to 2 decades now, it's certainly a decade and a half or a decade, that it works. It builds people who stay long-term in the city, and the need, because there is a certain amount of turnover of linemen, not that much, but enough that you need people, and it's not the same just putting out an employment notice. It's not the same as bringing people through the network. So I'm need to make some adjustments to the budget and make sure that we fund at least 1 more for a total of 2. I would prefer 4, but at least a minimum.
Haven't we voted already on just the, what was that, last year's budget? That we just, I don't think anyone philosophically disagrees with you. I think it was a financial decision that we made about how many we could fund. I think last year we funded the one. I mean, we have voted on this already.
We had multiple discussions. We would,
No, I know we talked about it a lot. I think we ended up voting for one because of the finances. Carmen, I see your hand is up.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, and we so agree with the merits of the program. We did in the budget, there was a supplemental request or enhancement request for at least 2 additional apprentices in the budget. However, as you know, the electric utility budget, of course, had some challenges this year, and we had to make some tough changes and adjustments to the budget to balance it. So it was in there to do, but because of the challenges that we couldn't fund it. As you recall, we had to take out even additional existing positions that we had in the budget in order to balance it. So that was the reason we certainly don't disagree. And we've heard the desire for the apprentice program to be enhanced or enlarged. And that was our intent. If it is the wish, we certainly, I am going to look back at the budget again, because we're still in the process, and see what adding 1 or 2 more would do and impact the budget, because we are at a balanced budget level right now. That's being presented for the public hearing next week. So we will go back and look at how we can make that happen. Now, do keep in mind, we had the modeling exercise, which incorporates, our working capital and how that gets us to our goal in our upcoming years. So I have asked our finance team to see how adding 2 more positions in our budget would impact, and even how it affect our modeling that we present. So we're prepared to give you that information.
I appreciate that. If I could add a request in that regard, it would be this. One, please do look back at the budget, see if there are for this coming year any perhaps remodeling construction things that could be deferred, or the cost reduced a little bit to cover the cost of the 2 extra, or not extra, but the 2 additional apprentices. I suspect always in a budget, as we all know from experience, there's ways to make adjustments. Part of our job is to figure out priorities, and an apprenticeship program is a long-term investment. The timing is significant because you don't want to start them too far out with.
Yeah.
And the other is, could you, Ms. City Manager, could you ask the I'm drawing a blank on the consultants that do our rate model, not the
Stantec?
Yes, exactly. Could you ask them if, let's say, the cost of the additional 2 apprentices is X, ask them what rate increase it would take to generate X. My guess is it's probably a quarter or 50 cents, or maybe not even that, but it would be helpful to have that number.
Sure, yeah. We were gonna look at the modeling and see if that needed tweaking.
Okay, I have to leave at 10 of, because I've got to be down to the 10 o'clock meeting. So let's see if we can keep it moving. I think we've got Carmen gets good direction for that.
Mhm.
And next would be, you have something else, Chris?
My list, I'm good.
Oh, okay, great. I don't have too much. I just, the whole thing about Bryant Park and the fencing and the trees. I've been meeting now, and I'm going to continue meeting with different groups. There's a group of ladies who we all know, Gail and Tracy and Susan Ona and Rosemary. They've called themselves Nest because they're talking about specifically right now we're focusing on Bryant Park. I'm also going to be meeting with the group of ladies with the moms with the kids about the concerns about their situation at the park, to see if, and then I'm going to bring the 2 groups together and go to the tree board and see if we can, work together rather than, us versus them kind of situation as far as what to do with Bryant Park, to get the people that are involved in it talking to each other. So hopefully we can come up with some sort of solution that people can live with. And I think it's a really good opportunity to get a large group of people that have an interest in that park together, talking about different things. And then the Nest, the group that I'm meeting with, they have a whole list of areas in the city that, it's all about trees. So Chris, we're working on trees, and it's a good little group. And so I just wanted, to share that I'm working with all the different groups to get some sort of idea so that everyone is heard and no one feels like they've not been heard about their concerns about the park and, trees. I've been bugging Carmen about trees for a long time now. And so I'm just wanting, we're working on it. I'm working on it. Other than that, I don't have too much. I really don't have too much.
Okay, very
Yeah,
much.
Pam.
Focus on trees. I think what I took away from the public comment was, thank you for the interest in Bryant Park. The thing that we really need is shade and trees to provide it, and maybe some shade structures.
Right, that's what we're talking about, yeah.
And I think it's great that you're bringing together different groups that have perhaps different views or different objectives or whatever, and get them talking. What I would ask is that you also interject into that conversation some sort of report from PBSO. I inquired, and I was a bit concerned to find from PBSO, and I can forward what I received in writing, that there were no concerns about pedophiles, that there were no particular issues there that were different from other parts of the city, and that the PBSO didn't need any particular additional resources. So I think it's important that there be a data factual basis on any of these discussions. So I would ask, I'll forward what I've received from Captain Bear to
Yeah, I think I think there might be a lot of reasons for that, but I'll certainly take a look.
Well, I tend to respect what Captain Bear puts in writing, so.
And I respect the people that look at the park and tell me what's going on, so we're gonna listen to everybody. We'll
Well,
listen to everybody,
including
the PBSO,
what's that?
including the PBSO.
Yeah,
Send it
it's
to me.
that we have a factual basis.
I mean, none of us spends that much time. I mean, I've got folks that go, I have people that walk their dogs every morning there, and they're disgusted by what they see down there. If you or I casually drive by there or walk through there, we may not happen at that point to see it. But when my nephew reports to me that people are shitting on the seawall and pissing in the bushes, that's a problem.
There quite a bit, and am there for extended periods, and I have a very different impression from some of the.
So my nephew's not telling the truth, and he didn't see what he saw.
Well, before we go down that road, we also have people like Tracy who literally live right in front of the place.
That's who I'm talking to.
And
that's who I'm talking to.
So, there's people we got to listen to. I use that park very regularly. I was there the other day when that boat broke free and that whole debacle. There's people to listen to, and I tend to agree. Listening to Captain Bear, I think, is really crucial.
I'm not saying
there's another, because there are. I attended a presentation at Bridges just the other night, and it was PBSO basically giving a presentation to the community so that they can better avoid being victims of crime, because in the last couple months there's been a little too much activity of robbery. And one of the big takeaways is Captain Bear and PBSO can tell you which properties have the highest concentration of 911 calls, and it's definitely not Bryant Park.
No, it's not. It's not going to be
Bryant. I intend to
Park.
communicate with Carmen and him very soon about one particular property, because I think we do have as a city a land use way of addressing it, but I'm not going to lay out those tactics right in a public meeting. So yeah, we need to listen. There are probably
Tracy is one of the Ronaldo. Tracy is one of the people I'm meeting with. It's Tracy, Susan Una, Gail
I-
Silverblatt, Rosemary. I'm meeting with Alice Mann, who lives across from the park.
Yeah, I
next
know.
week.
I've
Yes.
I've had those discussions with them too, and the
Yeah,
general
frequently.
consensus is a fence is probably not what.
That's why we're talking to
popular.
everyone. That's why I'm
Exactly.
talking to
And I want to lay it out there, recently West Palm actually dealt with something very similar where a number of residents asked for a fence for Monceau Park, which is right on the lagoon, claiming a lot of the same things. And West Palm Beach responded by proactively not allowing fences ever on that public park. But
Well, I'm talking to everybody, so we'll come
okay.
up with something.
That's fine. I'm just, laying it out there. One thing that before you step off, I want you to hear this because I would love to hear everyone's thoughts. But I did see recently that there was one of our neighbors regarding Live Local. One of the things that was passed, and I would love to hear if William is on, if this would be helpful, but they passed a policy to basically postpone any Live Local developments or projects for like 6 months or something. And I think the justification is, and I know we have we set money, we decided on money to get a position basically to directly respond to all that additional workload. And I was curious if it would be helpful to William and staff if we did something similar where we, I don't know if we have any Live Local things breathing down our neck. But if we need to put something in place that postpones them for some time so that we can be properly staffed, I wonder if that would be helpful.
Glenn,
So-
could we,
Can I ask a question, Mayor?
Yeah.
So Commissioner Diaz, you said a policy was made. Was there some initiative from where? Just to get
Yeah.
understanding.
I'm looking it up.
It was an,
Doral, Florida. I read it in, I think, South Florida Business Journal. Yeah. They literally voted for a 6-month development moratorium is what they call it, on things relating to Live Local.
I wonder how they could do them, Glenn. I'm sure you're listening, how it's almost contravening a state statute.
Because it's temporary, but that's part of what I think needs to be looked into, and if it's even needed. I don't know if William feels prepared
Yeah,
already, because I know we need to hire probably some people.
Yeah, I'll check with him, but we've been pretty much prepared. But
Okay.
I will check in with him on that.
And I'll look at what Dorel did as well.
What else? I don't have anything else right now. And we're missing 2 people who would have stuff, so what are we gonna do with, anything else from staff?
Trying to see if there's any announcements. I just want to say to the public, those who are listening, that we are having construction work on our sidewalk along the city hall. So there's some inconvenience that they may experience. So we apologize ahead of time, but we're just trying to make that area safe, and leveling out the concrete on that side of the building. So that's taking place as we speak. So you may hear the noise outside. I don't know if I don't think I have any other updates. Yeah.
a
Public
little,
hearing next Thursday for our budget process.
this isn't an update, just a reminder. I think we've raised it before, that when the traffic lights were redone at the intersection in front of City Hall of Lucerne and Dixie, it seems to have increased risk at Lucerne and Dixie. And I noticed that when you're southbound on Dixie turning into downtown,
You can't see the green light.
well, there isn't any green light anymore, the green arrow. It's a flat yellow.
Flash, right.
Visibility of the northbound people, you can't see them that well. To me, that seems like that's a recipe for disaster. I would ask that we go back to a specific green left turn
Well,
arrow.
thanks for bringing that up. We did bring that up at a a commission, we've had a number of complaints, and really, when you're going north, when I go north on Dixie, the two green lights, never mind the flashing light, the two green lights at Lucerne and Dixie, I mean, unless you're 25 feet in front of them, they look black. I mean, it's very hard to tell. I think these new lights have to be put in exactly the right angle, because some of them are fine, but some of them are they become black. You can't even see that there's a light there. So, Jamie, are we doing anything to follow up with that? Because I've had, I mean, it's pretty dangerous.
Yeah,
He actually sent another email over to the county on, was that Tuesday of this week, Tuesday morning? Because it took me a lot of passes, but I was able to actually get some photos going from
Okay.
all directions, going through both intersections at Lake and Lucerne and Dixie.
Mhm.
So I sent that over to David Ricks, our county engineer and public works, as well as Motazam Alturk, who's the county traffic engineer.
Is that
I've
a
had a
county road
conversation
or a
with-
state road? Isn't that a
So
state?
the way it works is
top-
it's DOT. So the DOT installed everything, but the county
Yeah.
actually maintains all the signals.
Okay.
So they're the ones who would actually look at it and see if this is an issue that they would have to deal with from a maintenance standpoint, or if it's something they need to kick back to the state because of an installation issue.
Okay,
So I'm starting with the county, but I had spoken with them before and they were looking into it, but I actually finally got photos to kind of show what you guys are talking about now.
it's pretty crazy.
I hope you had a driver and a photographer separate.
Jamie does everything safely, Chris. We have no concerns.
I'm sure he
I
does.
have so many additional FTEs, of course.
Yeah.
For that effort, it probably was not easy.
It
Yeah,
took
that-
many, many
it's-
passes, but I was trying to show that if you're head on, you can see the light directly in front of you. But if you're looking to the left or right, they don't look like they're illuminated. And especially
Right.
on that blinking yellow arrow you were talking about, Commissioner Roy, turning when you're southbound, turning in downtown onto Lake.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's kind of weird with the camera trying to catch those angles, but I was trying to show exactly what we're talking about.
So,
Great.
Okay, well,
Arrow, blinking yellow, whether it's visible or not, I'd go back to a visible green light, turn light.
yeah, but apparently that's the new DOT plan, because I'm up here in Orlando and they've got the same thing, the flashing yellow lights, arrows.
Yeah,
right?
I think just the maybe play devil's advocate, the theory behind it or the concept is with the flashing yellow, it means yield, obviously. And the idea is to spend more time to allow as much traffic to go, north and south on Dixie, because you're going to have far more traffic going in those directions, especially going north when you have like when Palm Trans stops there, it's a bit of a choke point there. So I think the idea is to keep the north and south moving as much as possible, and those who are turning yielding and finding their opportunity. And quite frankly, it's a cluster between that and
It's not good.
the
It's not
timing
good.
of the pedestrian crossing.
Right.
It's not an easy problem to solve
Pretty
for
cool.
sure. So I'm glad it's being looked at and worked
Yep.
on.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you once again, Jamie. All right, listen, I need to sign off and go down and represent the city at the Florida League of Cities Land Use and Economic Development Meeting. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody. Tomorrow night is the karaoke. Tonight is karaoke or the dog
The dog, yuppie. yuppie.
thing.
Mhm.
Okay,
And
so
Billy
borrow a
Bob.
dog and go up to the park this evening. I hope to see you all there. Have a great day, everybody, and I'm going to be signing off now. Take care.